The data analysis landscape is changing quickly in today's market. More and more AI tools for data analysis are coming out like every single week. And it can honestly feel really overwhelming, but don't worry guys, I got you. I'll be here to guide you through all the confusion, all these different releases, so make sure you hit subscribe. Today, I'll be comparing two popular AI tools for data analysis, ChatGPT and Julius AI, who happens to be sponsoring today's episode, to see how they analyze data differently and when you'd want to use one over the other. And although Julius is sponsoring this video, I'm going to try to be really fair in my analysis between the two. In fact, to compare these two AI platforms, I thought I would just test them both out the exact same way. So here's the test. I'm going to ask each the exact same questions in the exact same order on the exact same data set, and then judge their responses. That way you can see the differences and know the pros and the cons of each tool. For this experiment, we're going to be analyzing 1,444 data job listings from my own data job board, finddatajob.com. We'll be trying to see what trends we can learn about the 2025 data job market. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is go to ChatGPT and upload our file. You hit the plus button right here, you add the files, you select the file that you want. And I'm just going to go ahead and upload this right here inside of ChatGPT. So you can kind of see what our data set looks like. Now, I will say that ChatGPT doesn't do a great job of showing you this data set unless you open it up a little bit bigger like this. And you can see that we have the IDs, you can see that we have categories, we have the job description. This is where the actual description is of what the job entails, like the requirements and all that stuff. We have the link, the publication date, and then we have the actual job title, like AI Business Analyst or AG Data Analyst, the company, and the location. This one's in Moose Jaw, Canada. How exciting. The process for getting your data inside of Julius is very similar. You'll just go ahead and create a free Julius account. I already have one, so I'm going to log in. And then you'll do the exact same thing. Hit the plus button right here, upload the file, and I'll just go ahead and run that inside of Julius. Once again, you have a very similar preview right here. I like Julius's just a little bit more because out of the gate, it is a little bit easier to read than ChatGPT's is right here. One of the things I really like about Julius is if you click on any of these columns, for instance, if I click on the extracted at, it'll actually generate this clarification or this note on the right-hand side that kind of explains the column. In this particular case, it says that this column consists of timestamps representing when job listings were extracted. The timestamps appear to be mostly concentrated around June 28th, 2025, with some earlier dates also present. And I can go ahead and open this in a new image and kind of see what is going on. So it does look like we had a lot of jobs recently. So it almost like does some like pre-analysis for me at the beginning, which I think is really fun. Another thing I really like about Julius is it gives me 4 suggestions on things that I could do to analyze my data. For example, how are job titles distributed by category? What is the salary range for different job titles? Which locations have the highest number of job postings? And is there a trend in job title frequency over time? Now, ChatGPT kind of does something similar. It says, let me know what you'd like to explore. Trends over time, that's kind of similar. Most common job titles are companies. That was kind of similar. Skills analysis from descriptions, remote versus office roles, salary insights. But I have to actually copy and paste these or just rewrite it if I want to. In Julius, it's as simple as just clicking one of these. For example, let's go ahead and just click this one right here. Which locations have the highest number of job postings? And right away, Julius has already created a plot for me inside of their plots feature right here. And it's showing me that most of the jobs posted are remote, but then it goes Seattle, USA remote, United States, Bellevue, Washington, Chicago, so on and so forth. That was really quick. Now I want to go ahead and take that exact question, which locations have the highest number of job postings, and write it out here in ChatGPT. And so when I did that and press enter, it gave me some Python code to find the top locations. And then you'll get the top 10 spots, but here's a quick placeholder example based on typical tech listings in the United States. So ChatGPT didn't actually do any data analysis here. It just gave me code to actually do it. And I think in order to actually have it do some data analysis, I can have it write or run code right here and re-ask the exact same question. So let's go ahead and do that and hit run. Okay, so it generated some Python code for me right here. And then over here on the left-hand side, it gave kind of a similar response with remote, Seattle, Washington, USA remote, USA, Bellevue, Washington, Chicago, Illinois. So Kind of the same answer, a little bit easier to see it in graphical form, right? Versus just seeing this really small table that I have to expand. It was a little bit more automatic from Julius than it was inside of ChatGPT. Now, although this was interesting, the top locations, we had Seattle as number 2 and Bellevue, which is basically Seattle at number 5. So a more interesting question might be, what state has the most data jobs listed? Once again, ChatGPT wrote the Python script for me, but didn't actually run it. But yes, I would like you to run it. And it still just gave me the Python script. So I'll rephrase my question. And I'll say, what state has the most data jobs listed based on the CSV I uploaded? Okay, now it said the most common state is actually United States, followed by remote. These aren't actually US states, so the data is a little bit messy here. So we'll need to clean the location data a little bit more thoroughly. Would you like me to clean this? Yes, I would. And this is one of the trends that I'm going to just tell you that I see with ChatGPT a lot of the time, is it really requires you to kind of hold it by the hand a lot of the time and do things step by step. Although it is pretty fast to actually do the analysis, it's pretty slow because it only does like one little part of the analysis at a time. Only New Jersey appears to as a valid US state with one data job posting in your current data set. Oh, that's really interesting. Would you like me to try extracting? Yes, try extracting. Okay, then it looks like we have this cleaned version, which has New York at the top, California next, followed by Virginia, Texas, Florida, and Massachusetts, rounding out the top 6. All right, so that's how ChatGPT did. Let's go ahead and go back to Julius and ask it the exact same question. Which state has the most data jobs listed? Let's hit run and let's let Julius think and see what it comes up with. Okay, Julius created a bunch of Python code. One thing I like about Julius is it actually lets me see what the code is right here, obviously. Lets me edit the code, but also lets me see what the code's actually doing with this code explanation. So it's basically reading in the CSV, inspecting the location column, extracting state abbreviations from the location string, counting out the occurrence of each in the top 10, so on and so forth. And you can see that we actually got California, Washington, New York, Texas, Virginia, Florida. So quite interesting because we got very different numbers here. We got New York at 34 and New York at 73 here. We got California at 32 and California at 95. I will tell you that I've actually done this analysis before I was recording the video just to make sure I knew what I was doing in both of these tools. And I got a completely different answer from ChatGPT earlier that looked a little bit more like this, where it also had California, New York, Texas, and Colorado, which matches this a little bit more closely, but still not quite. If you remember earlier, we did see that Seattle and Bellevue, Washington were the top 2 cities. So it makes sense that Washington would be in the top 5. And I'm not even seeing, I see Washington at 7 here. So something's going on. And I think I trust Julius a lot more just because this number makes a lot more sense. And we also know that California is probably going to have the most data jobs because San Francisco, LA, there's quite a bit of data jobs there. Followed by Washington, New York, and Texas are quite large as well. So I think this makes a lot of sense here. All right, the next question we might want to ask is, well, what is the trend of job postings over time? I've really just started collecting this data, so it's not going to have a ton of insight for us, but we'll go ahead and see what trends we can find. So here's the trend based over time. I'd argue that this is not a trend. Giving me just a, group by of how many jobs were posted on that day isn't exactly 100% helpful. Something like a visual chart would be useful. So yes, please make a chart. And let's see what chart it makes. I'm giving it a lot of leeway right here to create whatever it thinks is best. I'm curious to see what ChatGPT comes up with. It looks like we got a line chart here created showing the daily number of job postings. And we see we have a really big jump recently, and that's probably because the way I've been collecting this data. But this is what the chart looks like. So, okay, it allows me to see certain trends like, oh yeah, we're starting to find a lot more jobs more recently. Let's go over and ask Julius the exact same question and see how it does. One thing I like in Julius is they have this reasoning tab over here, which shows you the plan. So we're going to inspect the data set to identify that there is a date or a timestamp column. That makes sense. We're going to parse that date column and then aggregate the number of jobs and then create the plot. And it looks like I had a plot created here from Julius, but it looks like it did it by month, which isn't really useful because most of this is from 1 or 2 months. So we'll say, let's make the same chart, but a daily version of it. And this is the truth with these tools right now is you are going to need to talk to it. It's not going to just do your analysis for you. It's there to be a co-pilot for you, but it still requires you to kind of think through what's going on in the analytical process. Aha, now Julius is done and it's created that very similar looking chart to what we had in ChatGPT. But one of the things I really like about Julius is it spit out some analysis for me. So let's see, it shows that line chart has daily counts across the whole span of the data set. Started modestly in May of 2025, grows rapidly through late May, and then fluctuates day to day. Even with the expected daily noise, weekends, batch scrapes, company posting habits, the overall upward momentum that we saw in the monthly views is still evident at the finer daily resolution, and spikes correlated to particularly active posting days, often midweek, while dips align with low activity periods, typically the weekends or on holidays. So that's very cool that it gave us that information versus over here, we didn't really get that from ChatGPT. We just kind of got the graph. Another really cool part about Julius is you can go down here to tools and change your chart theme. So right now we have no theme. We could try the Julius theme. We can try the scientific theme. We can try the dark theme. And so that way, when it creates a new graph, it'll be all in that dark theme. So let's actually just ask Julius to recreate that line chart with the new theme and see what it comes up with. All right, and there we go. We have our new chart. That's really just our old chart, but just dark with our new theme. And that's really nice because you can actually go in here and create your own theme, your own customized theme right here. And that way your charts can always look the same, which is really important when you work for a company or you're doing any sort of consulting or anything like that. All right, so another interesting thing that we can do with job listing data is take a look at the salaries. So I'm just going to ask it in a pretty general way. I'm going to say, analyze job salary trends. And I'm purposely being a little bit vague to see what it comes up with. I want to see what it does. So it says dataset you uploaded doesn't have a dedicated salary column, but it's possible salary info may be embedded inside the description field, which is the truth. But it's possible salary information might be embedded inside the description or title fields, and it is in the description field. So let's see, here's what we can do. Extract salary mentions using regex, look for things like this. Okay, great. Clean and standardize those salaries to numerical values and visualize trends over time. I'll start by extracting the salary figures from the description column. Here are some of the extracted salary samples from the job descriptions. The formats vary, for instance, 80,000, 50 to 70, $16. So next I can clean and standardize these into consistent numeric values like average annual salaries to analyze trends. Would you like me to convert these into estimated annual salaries, filter out hourly and contract roles, or analyze by job? I'd say let's do the convert into estimated annual salaries. And I'm glad that it's doing this step, even though I wish it would just kind of do it automatically for me. In an ideal world, it would. But when I did this previously, it skipped the step and thus the analysis was really off. So let's say here are the estimated annual salaries based on the values extracted from the job description. Many of those appear to be hourly rates that we scaled using a standard full-time schedule. Would you like me to filter out unusual high or incorrect values, show the average salary by job title or location, create a chart of salary distribution? Let's do the create a chart. Now, ideally for this, they would show a histogram. Let's see if they create a histogram. All right, we got our histogram and we kind of got our skew to the right. Kind of looks like our average is right around like the $90,000 range, it looks like. But we got a good histogram right here, a good breakdown. Some of these jobs pay up to $300,000. Let's go over Julius and ask the exact same thing, analyze job salary trends and see what Julius comes up with. Here's our plan from Julius over here on the right-hand side, writing some Python code. All right, Julius just finished up and it said, first we extracted salary information from titles plus descriptions with regex to capture values like 120 to 150 and $50 an hour. After cleaning, 438 postings contain recognizable pay figure. And I think that's really important that it told me how many. So only about a third of the jobs. It also gave me the average salary, which looks like to be $87,000, which is really cool. It also broke it down by the state, it looks like. So it does look quite interesting. It looks like Louisiana had the highest at 131,000 on average, which is quite interesting. And then my Utah was number 2. And then Texas and New York were a lot lower, California as well, which is quite interesting. Now it created the same histogram as the previous one did in ChatGPT, but it maybe found, it went out all the way to 600,000. It might have found a job out there in 600,000 land. So let's go ahead and say, create the histogram again, but lower the bin size. Okay, and one important thing it does say is the highest state averages are often driven by a few generous listings. Broader markets like California, New York, and Texas show more stable central tendencies. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and it looks like we still have some issues. So I would guess that most data jobs are not below 50,000. So I'm going to go ahead and tell Julius, I think most data jobs pay above 50K. So maybe you're reading hourly data as annual data. All right, and while Julius is thinking, I just remembered of a really cool feature they have, which is called Data Explorer. This actually lets you look at the data frames that Python's creating, or the tables. So for example, we know that there is about 438 different jobs, right? And so I can actually just go and open this up, and it will show me what the data table that it's actually looking at. And so I can kind of look at this and try to figure out maybe what's going on. So for example, yeah, look at their salary min at 25, salary max at 83, salary average 84. And so I don't think that's quite converting hourly jobs into salaried jobs. So I'm going to go see what it said to me now. Aha, there we go. It said we reparsed every listing, looked for words immediately around each number, flagged values with hour per hour. Those are multiplied by 2080. Okay, great. For numbers below 500 that did not look hourly, we assumed the K was missing. And so like 1,000, 120 became 120,000. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Got it. Okay, let's take a look. And then here is what our histogram looks like. I still think something's going wrong because the number of data analyst job listings that pay like this is like $10,000 seems quite low. So interesting here. I don't know exactly that. I would actually trust this one a little bit more. And I'm not sure exactly what was going on with Julius. Now, once again, to be fair, I'm not giving it very specific instructions. I'm just giving it very vague instructions and letting it do most of the thinking, analyze job salary trends. I should probably make a little bit better of a prompt that would actually tell the AI, this is what column to look for. This is what to do in this situation. Look for hourly, look for, annually, those types of things. And I'm not doing that in this case. So if I gave it a better prompt, maybe it would do a little bit better. But in this case, I'm actually going to trust ChatGPT just a little bit more in this particular time that it generated this chart. Now, I will say when I first did this analysis before recording this video, this is what ChatGPT came out with. And you'll see that it had the exact same issue with a lot of these hourly jobs being seen as annually, and that's just really not the case. So you do have to be careful what's going on when you're using these AI tools. Remember, they're not a replacement for you. They're an aid for help you to do your analysis a little bit faster, but they really should still have you there checking all of their work. All right, next question. One of the things we're really interested in is how many senior jobs are there versus how many junior jobs are there? So we can just ask another vague question. Let's say, investigate the impact of experience level. How many junior jobs are there and how many senior jobs are there? And once again, I'm making this really vague and it's going to be quite hard because sometimes senior is in the actual title or junior is in the actual title. Sometimes it's not. It's going to be in the description. And other times it might be inside of like a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. This is what ChatGPT says. It says, here's the breakdown of the experience level. Junior 24, mid 982, and senior 4.3. Let's go ahead and ask the exact same question to Julius AI over here. One of the things I really like about Julius AI is you can also switch to any model you'd like at any time. So for example, we've been using the Julius default right now, which basically Julius decides what model is best for you. I'm going to go check out let's go to Claude 4 Sonnet because I've heard really good things about it and test it out for this question. All right, Julius finished running. It did quite a bit for us, which is one of the things I really like about Julius is it does more than you ask it to. You don't have to ask it 100 things to get 100 things done. It automatically does these types of things for you, basically. So it looks like we have junior at 31, senior at 362, and other at 1051. We have the salaries broken down, which is really interesting that senior is somehow lower than junior, which I didn't really expect. And then we have some of the titles right here. So we first tagged each post by scanning its title for a common thing like senior, senior, lead, principal, staff, and then junior ones like junior, junior, entry, and associate. Another thing that we looked into is other. So there is 31 junior level, 362 of the senior, and 1,000 that did not really 100% say. Senior roles, surprisingly, and it says the word surprisingly here, average a bit lower because a handful of non-US and low salary titles dilute the mean. Medians are higher and more in line with expectations. See, not only did it tell me that this was surprising, but it explained why it happened. I think that's really interesting. For a spot check, the last table shows the first 5 rows of our annotated data, and I love that it's letting me check the data for it. So that is really interesting right here for me to look at this data. So very good job by Julius here. I think Julius kind of won this one. I found this really interesting, and if I wanted to share it with you guys, I have 2 options. On ChatGPT, you of course can just share any thread and make it to the public, right? On Julius, you can do the exact same thing by clicking share and making this thread public, but I also can do team sharing, which is really cool, that I could share, just within my organization, within my team. It doesn't have to be public, but my teammates could see the same analysis, which I think is a great feature that Julius has. Now, any part of a good data analysis is, of course, looking at what null values or missing data you have. And to do that, I really like a Python library that's called MissingNo. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT in this case can you use MissingNo on this data set and see what it says. It's basically going to tell me what percentage of my data is missing for each one of the columns. What you'll see that ChatGPT says is the MissingNo library isn't currently installed in this environment, so I can't use it here. But I can still help with things like pandas and matplotlib. So would you like me to help create a heat map or a bar chart showing which columns have missing values and how much is missing? And the interesting thing is I'm going to ask the same thing to Julius, and Julius is able to, even though that might not be the most used package of all time, it's able to install the package in the environment and actually use it. This basically means that whatever Python package you can use in the wild, in the real life on your local machine, you can use inside of Julius as well. That's not true of ChatGPT. Basically, Julius gives you higher control of your environment. Not only can you do things like pip install Python packages that aren't currently installed on the environment, you can actually go to the settings right here. You can go to expand resources and see what type of container you're using. So I'm currently in a memory boost right now with 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is supercharging my analysis with large files because I have a lot of power in this RAM right here. Julius also gives you a higher CPU than ChatGPT gives you, so your analysis should be a lot faster on Julius. All right, and there you go. MissingNo just ran and created this chart. My category column is the only one that has missing data, so I can see that really easily right here. In ChatGPT, I'd have to ask it to do a little bit extra stuff. So in this particular case, I think Julius won this example. Now, since this is a test, this is an experiment, I do want to ask a very vague question. I want to say, tell me an interesting trend in this data set. I'm just going to go let ChatGPT go through this data set and see what it thinks is interesting to tell me. Here's an interesting trend. Remote data jobs have consistently appeared alongside non-remote ones, and their volume holds strong month to month. This suggests that remote data roles remain a significant portion of the job market, not just a temporal shift. Want to explore which companies or states post the most remote jobs? So this shows me, if you couldn't see, this shows me a chart of remote jobs, this yellow, versus the non-remote jobs, red. And honestly, I don't really get what it's saying here. It's just saying that they've increased both since, April. And I guess they were kind of the same back in January and February. I'm not exactly sure what this is telling me and how much I actually like it. Let's go ahead and ask Julius the exact same vague question right here and see what it comes up with. Okay, interestingly enough here, Julius kind of came up with the same thing. Across the period captured in the file, the proportion of data-related jobs advertised as fully remote rises month over month. How this was derived, what we see, why it matters. Very interesting that it both did the remote jobs. Now, I will say that this graph is not the best. It is creating way too much of a X line chart here. I haven't been running this job board for longer than a year. So really only going back to maybe November of 2024 would have been the right move. And that data is not even in this particular data set. So not the best graph of all time, if I'm being honest here. But it's interesting that they both chose the same thing. When I ran this before I started recording, this is what ChatGPT gave me. Basically a word cloud art of the most common keywords in job titles, which is United States, Data Analyst, Senior Remote, Canada, Washington, Amazon, Intelligence, California. This is not very interesting. I don't think this is a very interesting chart, and I think it did very poorly. When I originally asked Julius AI, this is what it created for me. It showed me that most of the job titles inside of this data set were financial analyst and then data specialist and then marketing analyst, so on and so forth. And then it showed me, out of these different categories like Tableau and data specialist and data visualization, what percent of those jobs are remote. And so it was really interesting to look at Tableau. Only 22% of those jobs were remote, and data visualization was 16. Something like financial analyst was only 7. So it looks like if you're in data viz, you have a higher chance of working remote than if you would be as a financial analyst. I thought this was very interesting. In this particular case, I thought Julius did a lot better job than ChatGPT did, but for some reason, it decided to do some different analysis this time. Another really neat thing about Julius is not only does it have threads, kind of like this chat interface, but it has this notebooks interface as well, which is really cool. The notebooks interface allows you to do more repeated analysis if you're going to do this multiple times. So for example, maybe I'll go ahead and connect to my data job listing CSV here. And then you can basically tell it to identify top job locations. I'll say identify top jobs locations right here, and it's going to go ahead and create the code to do that. And then the cool thing is I can run that code whenever I want. Maybe I want to do it every single month and maybe send it out to my newsletter or send it out, post it on LinkedIn so all of you guys can see. That can be easily repeated by just clicking this with the updated data. Now, next month, I can just come back in and hit run all, and it would just do that. You can also export this as a CSV or export it inside of Google Drive, which is another cool thing is not only can you upload things like a CSV, but there's all different sorts of connections that you can do. For instance, you can connect to Google Drive, BigQuery, Snowflake, or Postgres. Now, going back to my thread or my chat conversation here, I can look at everything I did inside of Julius, inside of this outline right here, which basically creates a step-by-step list of everything I did. So for example, this is when I was creating the trend analysis right here. This is when I was doing the MissingNo part of my data set right here. Really clear history of everything that I've done. Also, if I wanted to, I could have switched from Python and actually done this analysis in R versus ChatGPT only knows Python at this point. So which tool should you be using? Well, I think it really depends on your task and what you're trying to do. Obviously, ChatGPT is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It can literally do anything. It can create images, it can write screenplays, and it can do data analysis. Julius AI is more like a hatchet or something that you're going to chop down a tree with, right? It's something very specific that it does very well. I probably wouldn't write a movie script inside of Julius AI because it's really focused on data analysis. One of my biggest concerns when I use AI tools for data analysis is just knowing what's going on. And I do think Julius does a better job of actually explaining what's going on. It gives you these little explanations afterwards. On every single code it pops out, it gives you this code explainer. It gives you the data explorer to see all of the different data frames and tables it's created so you can actually visually explore the data. And for the majority of the time, it does more than I ask it to, which I really enjoy. I don't really like having to babysit and be like, okay, now do this step, now do this step. Julius AI is a lot more ambitious in trying to do all of the analysis you could possibly want in one go. It also is a little bit more customizable for you and your team. We talked about how you can share it with your team, how you can create your own chart themes or choose your chart theme for consistent graphs every time you create a graph, or how you could ramp up your RAM and have just faster analysis in general. So overall, I think if I'm going to be analyzing data, I'm probably going to be using Julius AI because I think it just does a little bit more quickly than ChatGPT. But let me know what you think. I'd love for you to try the same experiment. Grab a data set, create a ChatGPT account, create a Julius account, and contrast and compare. Which one do you like more? If you need help finding a data set, you want to check out this episode right here, and then let me know in the comments how your experiment went. As always, thanks for watching.